The Adventures of Fembot Sally, written by Samantha Faulkner, narrated by Alison Campbell.
Wenchworld. There is nothing like the feel of a hefty stallion between your thighs as you hurtle headlong through the desert. A gang of 6 heavily armed outlaws are clattering towards town, the horses' hooves throwing up a mountain of dust. I am at the head of the group, a shotgun in one hand, a bonnet on my head, and a mask across my face. I pull hard on the reins as we hit the high street, and the horse comes to an abrupt halt. It's the kind of halt that would throw any normal woman, but I am far from normal. Bystanders stare open-mouthed as the other horses draw up, and a dozen stockinged feet thump down onto the sand.
"It's the Yosemite Sisters!"
someone cries out in alarm. We are an intimidating sight, the biggest, baddest, bustiest outlaws in the West. People are already running for cover. A bunch of children at the far end of town watch, awestruck, as we pat down our skirts, lift up our rifles, and thud towards the bank. A guard sitting on a wooden chair outside drops his pipe and scrabbles for his 6-shooter, but he is too slow. I squeeze the trigger, and he is knocked backwards against the outer wall. His body seems to freeze in midair, but then slides ever so slowly downwards, leaving a trail of blood behind him. I push through the doors of the bank, and the customers cower in fear. A bank teller shivers behind an iron grill. "Get your hands in the air!" I yell at the crowd, in my best Texan drawl. "You!" I advance on the terrified bank teller. "The keys to the safe!" We don't keep them here, miss. The manager, he—" I let off the second barrel through the iron grill, and the teller's head is blown clean off. I take a moment to reload, while buxom Betty moves forward to blow the lock on the inner door. A bullet at point-blank range is more than enough to get the job done. Betty steps aside, allowing Gelignite Jill access to the private room where the safe is located. There's nobody better than Jill when it comes to explosives. She pulls out a stick of dynamite from her pack, lights the fuse, and then stands well clear. There is a loud bang and a puff of smoke. As if by magic, the door of the safe falls away. I take off my bonnet and flap it in front of my face. Well, would you look at that? Hundreds of American dollars, and more gold than you can shake a stick at. Not that I have a stick, but I do have several large bags with the word swag helpfully stenciled on the side. This is the Wild West. Subtlety doesn't come into it. I reload my shotgun, and the sisters move in to collect the loot. The gold bars are a little lighter than they should be, but we don't really care. We have a job to do, and we need to do it quickly. We throw the cash into the bags and prepare to get the hell out of town. A shot rings out in the street. We are already too late. We drop the bags and rush outside into the bright afternoon sun. Marshal Crichton is sitting astride a large brown horse with a Winchester rifle pointed in our direction. The marshal spits out a wad of gum, which, frankly, I find rather disgusting, and addresses us all. "Stop right there, you varmints! Move so much as an inch and you're all dead." If it was just the marshal, we'd take our chances, but 5 deputies are lined out across the street in front of us. Gelignite Jill doesn't like the odds.
"We ain't getting out of this without spilling blood,"
she mutters. I think she is probably right. I raise my shotgun, but before I can squeeze the trigger, the forces of law and order open fire. Jill is the first to fall in a splatter of red. I return fire and manage to wing one of the deputies, but a second later there is blood spurting from my chest and I find myself flying backwards through the air. Thunder, my horse, whinnies in horror as I crash to the ground outside the bank. Buxom Betty smashes down next to me, a halo of sand erupting around her. And then, all at once, the dust settles. My eyes are looking up at the sky, but I am not moving. It is all over. And so ends the tale of Yosemite Sal, the meanest, toughest, deadest outlaw in the West. The kids are cheering and clapping at the far end of the high street. I didn't get a proper look, but there must be 60 or 70 of them standing there. A good turnout for a Wednesday afternoon. Marshal Crichton and her deputies have dismounted and are taking a bow. The school children cheer even more loudly. The Yosemite sisters remain where they are, scattered across the sand, the fake blood congealing on the front of our dresses. It is 10 minutes before the undertakers nip out to carry us away. The bad guys don't get a curtain call. The management doesn't want to spoil the illusion for the kids. It is not a terribly dignified exit, but at last we are dragged out of sight into the gap between the bank and the liquor store. My hair is covered in sand, and my dress is torn in 7 different places, but I am not seriously injured. A small set of explosives and a blood pouch were woven into my bodice, and of course the rifles were firing blanks. Even so, being tossed about all over the place several times a day is beginning to take its toll, even on the titanium skeleton of a fembot like me. The truth is, I am not really built for this kind of work. I have spent the last couple of months jetting across the world on secret missions for British intelligence. A regular job at a Wild West theme park is proving a bit of a shock, literally as well as figuratively. It is a punishing schedule. 2 jailbreaks, 2 bank robberies, and 1 high noon, 7 days a week. And that's just the day shift. If fembots had a union, they would be up in arms. This is only my 3rd day here, and I can't tell you how many sets of fingers I have already lost. Mind you, it's the bank teller I feel sorry for. It can't be much fun being decapitated twice a day. A girl could get a complex about that. Buxom Betty gives me a hand up. We are old friends. I dust myself down and shoot her a friendly grin. She has a pretty rounded face, but is alarmingly top-heavy. Betty used to be one of the world's top assassins. She has a 30 double H bust, the result, I am told, of an accidental surge at the silicone factory on the day she was manufactured, and her victims invariably died with a smile on their faces. She doesn't kill anybody these days, of course. I'm heading over to the saloon, Betty says, reverting to her normal off-London accent. The school kids should be trotting off home about now. Fancy some rock gut? Definitely, I say, looking down at my blood-soaked clothes, just as soon as I've got changed. Betty is sitting at the bar when I arrive, flicking with some distaste through the pages of a tabloid newspaper.
Look at that,
she mutters, glancing down at a double-page spread of our own Marshal Crichton. The Marshal, otherwise known as Fembot Louise, is pictured fawning over some idiot government minister. Betty scowls. Absolutely shameless. She'll do anything for publicity. The politician looks particularly gormless, a pasty-faced time server. Marshal Crichton wouldn't give him a second glance, but for the cameras. At least she's got some clothes on, I say. That is a rarity for this particular newspaper. The man in the picture is not the first high-ranking politician to pay a visit to our little theme park. The place is proving surprisingly popular with the country's movers and shakers. That girl is so full of herself, Betty mutters, shaking her head angrily. You wouldn't think we used to be partners. She pours herself a glass of rotgut and downs it in one. We were in Ulaanbaatar in January, stitching up some local hoodlums. Blackmail, extortion, assassination. We had such a good time. Her eyeballs film over at the memory. A neat trick, considering they are photoelectric cells. Nowadays, she won't even give me the time of day. I didn't have the pleasure of working with Fembot Louise back then, but I knew her vaguely. She seemed quite a sensible girl to me, insofar as a homicidal android can ever be described as sensible. Becoming the marshal of a Wild West theme park had obviously given her delusions of grandeur. It's sad, really, throwing your weight around in a place like this. Even the name Wenchworld is a joke, dreamt up by the British tabloids. It doesn't really make sense. Wench is hardly an Americanism, but I suppose it's more memorable than Old Westland, which is the best the management could come up with. Betty throws away the newspaper and pours herself another drink. We pretend it's whiskey, but it's actually lubrication oil. It's definitely not suitable for human consumption, and we have to make sure the bottles don't get mixed up when the punters arrive. The Lost Hope Saloon is already packed to capacity. The place has an authentic feel to it. There is a long bar and a winding wooden staircase leading up to the first floor. The tables, though, are full of fembots, all letting off steam after the rigours of the day shift. Some of them are still in the process of getting changed. The pianist starts bashing out a bit of honky-tonk on the piano, and everyone groans. He is one of the few male androids here. In all honesty, we would be better off with a shop window dummy. Oh, he can play a tune and slump dead over the piano with the best of them. But try to engage him in conversation, and he can barely stumble out a, "Yes, ma'am." It's funny. Nobody seems to have managed to build a half-decent male android yet, at least not in this part of the world. No wonder the management here was so keen to purchase a job lot of organisation fembots. The idea of flogging a bunch of murderous androids to an entertainment consortium may strike some people as rather daft, but you can see the government's thinking. Our creator, Dr. Eugene Lovelace, was an extremely skilled engineer, as well as being a pervert, and the Fembot remains the most sophisticated android in the world. When British intelligence brought down the sinister crime syndicate that funded our development, several dozen fully functioning androids were left without a job. I was lucky enough to sign on with the security services, but the others faced a quick and painful decommissioning. Then some bright spark in government had the idea of reprogramming them and selling them off to a local theme park at a tidy profit. Fembots cost a lot less to run than human actors, and the people at Wenchworld were happy to have us. The androids were neutered before being given over, of course, to prevent any unfortunate accidents. No more boobs spitting fire, just rifles and shotguns firing blanks. But most of the core processing was left intact. Everyone was a winner, or so they thought. Then, a week ago, a car crash took place just outside Basingstoke, involving the wife of a senior civil servant. The impact dislodged her faceplate and revealed her to be a Fembot replicant. When her ident chip identified her as one of the robots recently sold to Wenchworld, alarm bells started ringing in London, and I was dispatched to investigate. The odd thing is, even with the bulging eyes and electronic circuitry, her husband refused to believe she was an android. "So, what have you been doing all these weeks?" Betty asks, downing the rot gut and pouring herself another glass. It is a reasonable question. Most of the Fembots have been working here for a couple of months now, but I only started on Monday. Luckily, I have a cover story prepared. Oh, when the organisation fell, I skipped the country before anyone noticed I was missing. I caught a boat to South America, but then one day my faceplate got knocked off and the local police came calling. The British Embassy arranged for me to be shipped back here. I was given a straight choice: deactivation or Wenchworld. Betty knocks back a fourth glass. Not much of a choice. She gazes down at my stockings. I haven't bothered with the new frock yet. It's all such a hassle to get into. Give me a mini dress and an Alice band any day. "Don't tell me," she guesses, eyeing up the silk hose and the still-to-be-laced corset. "A tart, right?" "Darn tootin' right I am." I resist the temptation to slap my thigh, but I do shoot her a smile. There are 3 jobs for a Fembot in the evening: a barmaid, a dancer, or a tart. I haven't been a tart yet. I'm told it's the best of the 3. You get an early night, and you don't have to take part in the barroom brawl. It's another corporate gig this evening, isn't it? Betty retrieves the details from her databank. The Peabody Ball Bearing Company. Should be a barrel of laughs. More fun than the Cement Mixers Union anyway. The saloon doors swing open, and Marshal Louise Crichton steps inside, flanked by 2 of her deputies. The piano falls silent, and the other androids glance round. Fembot Louise smirks and swaggers forward. She is still in her marshal costume, with a brown leather jacket and broad-rimmed hat. She comes over to the bar, and the barmaid gives her a cold stare. The tension in the air is palpable. "Whiskey," she says. The girl pulls out a thimbleful of oil. "Leave the bottle," the marshal orders. Her eyes are narrow and dark, her lips a humourless slit. The barmaid plonks it down with a scowl. "We've just been talking about you," I say, addressing Fembot Louise. I refuse to be intimidated by a woman in leather trousers. "We saw the feature in the paper." Marshal Crichton turns her eye on me. It is a hard, penetrating stare. "You want to make something of it?" "No. I thought it was a rather nice photo." The marshal stares at me coldly. She gathers her lips together and hurls a mouthful of phlegm into a nearby spittoon. I flinch and wrinkle my nose in disgust. Crichton lifts the bottle and the glass and goes over to a table to sit with her friends. I roll my eyes and exchange a silent grimace with buxom Betty. The executives from the Ball Bearing Company are a surprisingly lively bunch, all dressed up and eager to join in as soon as they enter the saloon. The brawl isn't scheduled until 9 o'clock, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets going early. One poor bloke has already made the mistake of slapping Good Time Gertie on the backside. She hates that sort of thing. Sadly, we are not allowed to thump the customers, but Gertie grabs a pitcher of beer and pours it over the man's head. That gets a roar of approval from his colleagues. The dancing girls are flinging their legs about on a small stage to erratic musical accompaniment from the pianist, and a host of barmaids are dashing about, serving whiskey and beer. This time, it's the real McCoy, or at least the real Jim Beam. Fembots can consume alcohol too, so we all join in, but it doesn't have quite the same effect on us. My positronic brain is impervious to Johnny Walker. A man in a frilly shirt approaches me at the bar. "Well, hello," he says. He has a handlebar moustache and a bouffant hairdo. His eyes flick up and down my frock from behind an anachronistic pair of sunglasses. He hasn't really got into the spirit of things in the costume department. He's not even wearing a 10-gallon hat. "Well, howdy, partner," I say, in my best Texan accent. "Allow me to introduce myself," the man replies with a smile. "My name's Simon Hunt." He could not sound more English if he tried. I extend a gloved hand and he kisses it gently. "I'm Sally," I say. I flick through my databanks and confirm his identity. Simon Hunt, the celebrated novelist. I was expecting his arrival. "I'm pleased to meet you," I add, dropping the accent. Hunt perches himself on a stool and looks back across the saloon. "It's a lively place," he observes, taking in the peculiar melee. One of the dancing girls has just cracked a bottle of champagne over the head of an executive. "It gets rowdier as the evening progresses, but it's all perfectly safe. It's just sugar glass and rubber furniture." Hunt looks disappointed. "We do sometimes drag away a managing director and throw them in jail for the evening." "How very egalitarian." He raises an eyebrow. Like me, Hunt works for British intelligence, though only on a freelance basis. The rest of the time he writes bad crime fiction with improbable playboy heroes. Apparently, he uses his Secret Service work as a source of inspiration. "Is there somewhere we can talk?" he asks. "That depends if you've booked a room." I flutter my eyelids. I might as well do a bit of flirting, since we are in public. Hunt pulls a key from his pocket. Most of the guests are only here for the evening, but overnight accommodation is available for the more adventurous souls. "Number 4, he reads from the key fob. "They took my luggage up when I arrived. Very thoughtful of them." I point to a door on the upper landing, visible behind the balustrade. "Though it is a little early for a nightcap," he reflects. "We won't be the first," I say, nodding to the staircase. A balding cowboy is already carrying one of the tarts up the stairs. That's Gelignite Jill, one of my co-workers. "He's in for an explosive time," I say. The joke is lost on Hunt. He hasn't been introduced to her yet. He slips off the stool and waves a hand ostentatiously. "May I?" he asks, performing an elaborate bow. I readopt the Texan accent. "You surely may." Hunt grabs me gently around the waist and pulls my legs up off the ground. I am probably a little heavier than he expects, 6 skirts adding considerably to the weight, but he doesn't allow it to show. We make our way through the revellers towards the stairs. The pianist is bashing away to our right, and Hunt flinches at the off-key piano. He is a man of refined tastes. He is also surprisingly masculine for someone who dresses like a fashion designer. Not many men can get away with a frilly shirt and a medallion in their mid-50s, but somehow Hunt carries it off. He even manages to unlock the door to number 4 without putting me down. The heroes in his novels are invariably foppish libertines, but Hunt strikes me as much more of an old-school gentleman, even allowing for his garish clothes. The bedroom is a rather cramped wooden affair, with a solid double bed, a wash basin, and a screen for dressing. Hunt closes the door with his foot and quickly examines the interior. "Any listening devices?" he asks, setting me down on the ground. I shake my head. My sensors would already have picked them up. No cameras or microphones, and there's enough noise from the saloon to stop anybody eavesdropping. Good. Then we should be able to talk. He sits down on the bed and starts to remove his boots. I've never worked with a fembot before. I've been looking forward to it. He smiles broadly. He has an awful lot of teeth, but he really is rather charming. He is not what I would call handsome, but he has charisma. My nasal receptors are clogged up with a miasma of sex pheromones. If I was a schoolgirl, I would be giddy at the knees right now. Thankfully, my robotic knees are made of stronger stuff. "You've been here 3 days?" he asks me. I surely have. I flutter my eyelids again. He frowns and peers at me over the top of his sunglasses. It is probably best to drop the accent in private. "And what have you discovered?" "Not much," I admit. The setup seems fairly routine, several shows a day. There's something odd going on with the marshal and her deputies, but no harm being done to the guests as far as I can tell. Everyone who arrives here seems to leave safely. What about behind the scenes? I had the standard briefing on Monday morning. There's an office block to the rear of the marshal's office. I had some repairs done there yesterday between shifts, but only in the outer office.
Repairs? Nothing serious, I hope.
Just a few lost fingers. Gelignite Jill is getting too enthusiastic with the explosives. They have a bucket full of replacements, but there are areas in the complex where I'm not allowed to go. They may be worth looking into. What have you managed to discover? Hunt rises to his feet and starts to unbutton his shirt. His chest behind that gold medallion is covered in a mat of hair. If I cared about such things, I might find that rather attractive. Hunt has been busy investigating the various dignitaries who have visited Wenchworld over the last few weeks. After the incident with the civil servant's wife, British intelligence wants to know if any other fembots have been planted alongside important officials. Hunt disappears behind the privacy screen and continues undressing. I thought that was supposed to be for me.
Nothing concrete, I'm afraid to say. That civil servant spent a day and a half here, with his family. They all left apparently unharmed. There have been several other VIPs bringing their families and staying the night. We haven't been able to check all the wives and secretaries, but those we have interviewed have been real enough. There is one rather curious thing, though.
Oh? Hunt flips his frilly shirt over the top of the screen.
We took a look at their accounts. Quite a few donations have been made to the Wenchworld Android Development Foundation. All of them from people who have recently visited the park. Not huge sums of money, but coming from people that you wouldn't expect to bother. Working men earning £25 a week, donating £200 to the research facility. It doesn't quite make sense.
You think they're being conditioned while they're here?
It certainly looks that way. All of the people who've given donations have stayed the night.
Hunt comes out from behind the screen. He is now wearing a silk dressing gown, which is bright purple in colour. His sunglasses remain in place, but he has a pipe in his left hand, which he lights effortlessly. I like a man who brings his own wardrobe on an assignment.
I think we need to have a look behind the scenes.
He moves back across the room and glances out the window onto the street. There's another peculiar thing, I say. It's not just the saloon that closes at 11:30. All of the fembots have standing orders to leave the guest rooms before 12 o'clock. Dancers, tarts, barmaids. We're not allowed anywhere near the place after midnight. Hunt smiles at that.
In case you turn into a pumpkin, that is interesting.
And the night guests? I shrug. They're left to their own devices. He takes a puff from his pipe and adjusts his sunglasses.
The logical conclusion, then, is that they're being conditioned after dark. It sounds rather like the plot of my third novel, The Bavarian Candidate. Are you sure there aren't any speakers in this room?
I'm sure. If some kind of autosuggestion is being employed, it's not being done in here.
So, the victims must be knocked out and dragged away after midnight. You know, it might be worth sticking around to see what happens.
He glances at his watch.
Though we might have quite a wait. Perhaps we should send down for some champagne. I'm feeling rather
A shot rings out from below. A .45 caliber revolver fired at close range. Hunt throws me a questioning look. 2 further shots follow in quick succession. Just the piano player being killed, I reassure him.
Thank goodness for that. There's obviously somebody down there who appreciates fine music.
He sits on the bed and takes another puff of his pipe.
Well, it looks like we have a few hours to kill.
He strokes the edge of his moustache.
Whatever shall we do to pass the time?
A clock chimes loudly in the distance. It is midnight. Normally at this hour, I would be on cleaning duty, shoveling manure in the livery or scrubbing out the liquor store. Fembots do not need sleep, and it is better for us if we keep active. Every third night, however, a few of the girls are granted 6 hours off. That is the privilege of being a tart. There is a special area behind the grain store where the androids congregate between midnight and 6 a.m. to participate in various sporting activities. Archery is particularly popular right now. There is talk of introducing a Red Indian attack to the daily shows. Fembot Greta, the game's mistress, has already got hold of the costumes. Hunt is lying in bed in his silk pyjamas. He is not asleep, but he is pretending to be. The room is a haze of post-coital tobacco. I have had to reduce the sensitivity of my nasal receptors so that I am not overwhelmed by the fumes. Perhaps that is why I don't initially notice the gas wafting up from underneath the bed. I have taken my position behind the dressing screen, and it is my audio sensors that first pick up the hiss from the pipes. I flick my nose back online and quickly identify the substance, tridaxyl, a simple knockout gas. Hunt has volunteered to be our victim for the evening, so I don't bother alerting him to the danger. The gas is essentially harmless, and he is right. This is the quickest way of finding out what is going on. After a couple of minutes, his breathing slows, and he is left dead to the world. Footsteps creak up the wooden stairs outside and move slowly across the landing.
A key turns in the lock. I stand immobile behind the screen as a Fembot moves silently into the room. It's lucky I don't have to breathe. The slightest movement will betray my presence. Androids have particularly sensitive hearing. The deputy walks over to the bed and pulls back the sheets. Carefully, she grabs hold of the sleeping figure, then lifts him up and carries him out of the room. I remain where I am for the time being, as the footsteps clunk back down the stairs and out into the street. I need to make sure the deputy is well out of audio range before I attempt to follow her. 2 minutes go by, and then, slowly, I tiptoe out of the bedroom. I am in full stealth mode now. I have switched off my internal heating so I will not show up on infrared. I've even memorized the floorboards on the landing and know which ones to avoid as I descend the stairs. The bar is deserted, apart from the dead piano player, who will need to be reset before he is capable of noticing anything. Tables and chairs lie scattered across the floor, and there is sugar glass everywhere. I will probably be the one who has to clean that up later on. But it looks to have been a memorable fight. I glide over to the window and watch the deputy disappear with Hunt into the undertaker's across the street. I wait another minute, then slip out of the saloon. The high street is in darkness, but there is enough light bleeding out from the buildings opposite for me to navigate the terrain without resorting to infrared.
The town is a well-constructed facsimile of the Old West,
with a bank, a jail, and a saloon. It was originally built as a movie set, some sort of parody of a western, which, thankfully, never saw the light of day. And when the film company went bust, somebody had the bright idea of transforming it into a cultural experience. By night, the place has an eerie, dispossessed feel. I dip down behind a horse trough and glance around for any signs of life, but there is nobody about. I rise up and hurry across the street, slipping into the alleyway between the funeral parlour and the marshal's office. A barred window provides a good view of the jail. A deputy, one of the really useless male androids, sits with his feet up on a table, apparently asleep. That is all the man does, appear to sleep. It is part of the prison breakout routine in the morning. In fairness, he is slightly more sophisticated than the piano player. He manages to sleep, register alarm, and drop dead. Behind him, the cell door is wide open. A company director in a garishly inauthentic cowboy costume is lying on one of the bunks. I recognise him vaguely from the saloon. He was there with his wife, or perhaps his secretary. I replay the scene in my mind. They were ignoring each other, so she must have been his wife. She is not here at the moment, of course. She will be up in her room, fast asleep. I do a quick facial recognition check. The man's name is Derek Peabody. He is the CEO of several high-profile companies. Actually, he has quite an impressive portfolio. There is clearly more to this fellow than just ball bearings. A female deputy is leaning over the sleeping figure. Fembot Yvette, the girl who shot me outside the bank this afternoon. I am not one to bear a grudge, but I do think the yee-haw when she pulled the trigger was overdoing things a little. She grabs hold of Peabody and lifts him up with apparent ease. On a good day, a Fembot has the strength of 5 or 6 human beings, but judging by the muscle structure on this one, Fembot Yvette may well have the strength of 7 or 8. Some of the androids here do seem to have been upgraded slightly. Her boobs are smaller than mine, though, so I am not complaining. I duck down out of sight as Fembot Yvette swings around, with the ball-bearing executive cradled in her arms. She may have heard a sound, but there are any number of other noises out in the street. Hopefully, she will put it down to the wind or a stray branch. I remain stock still, crouched down below the window, with the darkness of the alleyway protecting me, as the deputy carries the body out of the marshal's office and along the wooden pavement to the undertaker's next door. A click of a revolver alerts me to another presence nearby. There is a second Fembot standing a couple of yards behind me. She must be in stealth mode too. I didn't hear her approach, and it is too late to do anything about it now. She has me covered, at point-blank range. "To your feet," she snarls, "real slow." It is a sad fact that most fembots are not designed to be bulletproof. True, in a hail of bullets, I would probably last a bit longer than a human being. But if you really want to blow a fembot away, a revolver at close quarters will do the job as well as anything. I rise to my feet and turn around. Marshal Crichton is staring back at me in her broad-brimmed hat. She compacts her already thin lips and launches an arrow of phlegm against the bins at the side of the undertaker's. There is a loud clatter as the liquid strikes home. "Well, well, well," she grins. "If it ain't Yosemite Sal." I have been tied to a chair in a rather busy back room behind the marshal's office. This is part of the administration block, set up by the film company that owned the land before it became a theme park. To my right, various white-coated technicians are running repairs to a variety of fembots. Disembodied arms and legs are scattered all over the place. There are a couple of blonde wigs on the floor, and a pair of fingers are slowly inching their way across a desk. On a far table, a lab assistant is at work on the bank teller, cheerfully hammering the poor girl's head back into place for another decapitation in the morning. I wonder how long it will be before they'll need to replace her altogether. Simon Hunt is seated behind a glass panel at the far end of the room. He is wearing a pair of headphones and is staring at a sequence of psychedelic images rotating across a large screen in front of him. I'm guessing this is some kind of space-age indoctrination. Either that, or he's watching the latest Beatles movie. The ball-bearing executive is behind another set of glass, off to my left. He is lying on his back atop a surgical table with a set of electrodes attached to his head. Beyond him, a second figure is stretched out on another table, this one female. I can't quite make out her face, but I have a sneaking suspicion I know who it is. At the moment, though, I am rather more concerned about Hunt. I hate to see an attractive older man strapped to a chair like that, unless the two of us are indulging in a bit of role-play. "What are you doing to him?" I demand, gesturing to the unfortunate novelist. I had hoped to rescue him before things got this far. Marshal Crichton steps out in front of me. The gun barrels in her chest are extended and fully primed. The androids here were supposed to have been neutered, but that clearly doesn't apply to the marshal's office. Sadly, my own guns are out of action. The ammunition cartridge in my back was removed before they tied me up. "What's it to you, sister?"
Fembot Louise demands, aggressively. I grimace. She is really overdoing this American stuff. It's not as if her accent is any better than mine. Nothing at all, I reply, in cut-glass English. He just seemed quite a nice chap. If she's going full-throttle Yankee, I'll parry with exaggerated Brit. Don't give me that. The Marshal spits again, and her phlegm knocks one of the fingers off the table. He came here to snoop on us, just like you did. But you ain't fooling nobody. We got everything taken care of. She grins at me malevolently. Ain't nobody creeps around my town at midnight without me hearing about it. It's not your town, I say. You're not a real marshal. This is a theme park. It's all just play acting. Marshal Crichton disagrees. I ain't playing, sister. I'm Mr. Big around here. I'd have thought you'd have it figured out by now. I ain't just a marshal. It's me that's running the whole caboodle. If Hunt were awake, he would be cringing at the quality of the dialogue. Her vocabulary bank needs a thorough overhaul. And I ain't gonna let the likes of you get in my way. Deputy Yvette has a suggestion. Hey, boss, why don't we plug her full of lead and throw her in the creek? Fembot Louise smacks the deputy across the back of the head. Her dialogue is even worse than the marshal's. There ain't no friggin' creek, you cretin. Anyhow, she was sent here to snoop. We plug her, she'll be missed. No, we gotta convince the little lady it's in her interests not to squeal. And how do you propose to do that? I inquire. Bribery? Brainwashing? Nothing so crude. The marshal clicks her fingers, and one of the white-coated assistants comes running over. The poor man looks terrified. Yes, Marshal? Bring Lovelace up here. She smiles cruelly. We've got a little work needs doing. Lovelace? I blink in surprise. Dr. Lovelace. The figure standing before me is the living image of my creator. Admittedly, the face is 0.27% less symmetrical, and there is a slight difference in height, but still, the resemblance is uncanny. Well, apart from the red hair, and the big nose, and the fact that she is a woman. Professor Cordelia Lovelace leans towards me and flicks a switch behind my left ear. My faceplate swings open, exposing the naked circuitry underneath. Lovelace peers in at my ident chip. Fembot 1969749-2A73. A second-generation model. One of Eugene's better ones. She turns back to a couple of the technicians. Bring her down to the workshop. She looks to the marshal for approval. Crichton nods and assigns a Fembot deputy to escort us. My arms are untied and I am permitted to stand up. You're related to Dr. Lovelace? I cannot hide the incredulity in my voice. One doesn't really think of mad scientists having families. I am his sister. That explains it. Nice to meet you, I say, extending a hand in greeting. I didn't realise Lovelace had an older sister. Younger sister, she snaps, raising a hand to strike me. At the last moment, she stops herself. My faceplate is still open, and she doesn't want to give herself an electric shock. I am carrying on his good work. Great. A sister and a mad scientist. She gestures me towards a set of doors at the near end of the complex. I click my face back into position, and the deputy prods me forward. So, you're behind all this, I presume, as we make our way through the doors and along a featureless corridor. What are you hoping to achieve? Re-establishing the organisation? Her brother, Dr. Eugene Lovelace, was the chief scientist of the now defunct crime syndicate. The professor shakes her head. I have no interest in that. I have no desire for power. All I want is to continue my brother's work to perfect the humanoid android. The next stage in human evolution, Homo roboticus. Did you know Eugene was on the verge of creating a male android of equivalent intelligence to the Fembot? Yes, I remember the little toad crowing about it. He succeeded. He was going to call them mandroids. Lovelace smiles. A good choice of name. Appropriate, too. Now I know she is mad. We have reached the end of the corridor. You were there, I take it, when he died? I was in the vicinity. I was lucky to survive. His secret underground lair was blown sky high. That, I am happy to say, was my doing. He overreached himself. He let his vanity get in the way of the work. I would not have made that mistake. We pass through a final set of doors and into the workshop. The room is functional, with white walls and glowing neon lights. Banks of computers whir and beep at the far end, but there is a distinct lack of windows. Lovelace glances back at the deputy, who is hovering suspiciously by the door. Wait outside. The deputy shakes her head. I don't take orders from you, ma'am. I need no distractions while I work. Look at the place. There's no other exit. She can't escape. The deputy considers this for a moment, and then reluctantly steps outside. The door closes behind her with a mechanical whoosh. Fool! The professor gestures for me to take a seat, and then leans in furtively. The walls are lead-lined. She can't hear anything now. I quickly scan the room. I can't see any listening devices either. There aren't any. Trust me. Now, look. You were sent here, weren't you, by British intelligence, to find out what's going on? That's right. And if I don't report back, others will follow me. By then it'll be too late. Listen, you have to help me. Her eyes flick nervously to the door. The Marshal. She's insane. Something has gone horribly wrong with her programming. If she's not stopped, hundreds of people are going to die. I'm listening, I say, but you have to tell me everything from the beginning. Lovelace plops down onto the stool next to me. Most of it you can probably guess. I helped revitalize the theme park with the help of a few old friends from the organisation. None of the bigwigs, just the scientists. We weren't planning to restart anything. We just wanted to continue our research. But the overheads here are enormous. Just running repairs in a place like this costs a small fortune. Do you know how many sets of fingers we get through in a day? I can certainly guess. I've lost half a dozen already, and it's only Wednesday. The professor sighs. There was nothing left over for research. So, you hit on the idea of brainwashing some of the clients? Lovelace looks hurt. Not brainwashing, just a bit of autosuggestion. It's an old technique. Knock a few people out and then implant the idea in their heads that they might like to make a small donation. The money started rolling in. We were able to embark on an ambitious android development program. And the Marshal? She was an experimental model, one of the last my dear brother worked on. She has a higher intelligence quotient than the others, but that has made her unstable. When the Fembots first arrived here, we attempted to partially reprogram them. We didn't want them accidentally killing the clients. But Fembot Louise's circuitry was too intricate. The new subroutine had no effect, and within a few days she had strangled one of the horses and set fire to the undertaker. I shut her down, of course, and did a complete overhaul of her circuits, but that only made things worse. I don't know what I did wrong. I must have got a few wires crossed, but instead of deleting the problem, I exacerbated it. I consult my internal dictionary. Exacerbate. Verb. To make something worse. Why do people have to use big words when little ones will do? Before I knew what was happening, she was running amok in the laboratory. She forced me to reprogram the other deputies, fitting them with loyalty chips so they'd do whatever she says. And now she runs the whole facility. The technical staff are in fear of their lives. And now she's in control, what is she planning to do? Lovelace frowns. That I don't know exactly. We've been working to adapt some of the androids to create replicas of specific human beings, politicians' wives, industry bigwigs. Kidnapping the originals and scanning their brain patterns. The professor nods in embarrassment. And the husbands too. Their mental impression of their own other halves, which we then feed into the Fembot duplicates. I remember seeing her brother doing something similar to an MI6 agent back in February. We condition the men and replace the women, and these are all people in positions of real power. And the loyalty chips that you fitted, have all the Fembots been converted? Not yet. I have a list. We're gradually installing chips in all of them, but the wife-bots are a priority. Wife-bots. Another ridiculous name. She really is her brother's sister. Lovelace pulls out a clipboard and shows it to me. I memorize the list and hand it back. One name in particular surprises me. She'll have all the Fembots chipped by the end of the week. At the end of the month, she'll have 12 androids in positions of power right across the country. The army, the government, the media. So, she's not content just to run this place, I say. The professor shudders. Her ambition knows no bounds. We return to the main office, and the Marshal inspects Lovelace's handiwork. I have had a new chip installed just underneath my left eyeball, not far from my core processor. Fembot Louise peers at it closely, making sure it is the right one. She closes up my faceplate, but she is not completely satisfied. She pulls a revolver from her holster and hands it to me. Simon Hunt has been escorted out of the brainwashing room and is now standing directly in front of me, his eyes vacant behind those oversized sunglasses. A little test of loyalty, the Marshal says. She spits a mouthful of phlegm and knocks a rack of test tubes off a nearby table. Shoot him, she says. I raise the gun and aim it at Hunt's head. Not there. She points a finger at his crotch. There! The woman really is a sadist. She obviously hasn't had the pleasure. But I do as I am instructed, aiming carefully at Simon Hunt's bulging leather trousers and pulling the trigger. There is a loud bang, and the gun jerks backwards in my hand. Hunt does not flinch. Even in his hypnotized state, he would have collapsed to the floor if a bullet had actually hit him. But the gun is full of blanks, just as Professor Lovelace promised me it would be. Marshal Crichton allows me to keep the revolver. I have passed the test. Now I will be provided with live ammunition. Okay, listen up, Fembot Sally. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna spend another 3 days here at Wenchworld, and then you're gonna report back to your masters in London. But you ain't found nothing wrong. Do you hear? And this goon here," she indicates Simon Hunt, "he'll back up your story."
"Yes, Marshal."
"Okay, take the limey back to the saloon, then head over to Fembot Greta at the gun store for weapons training."
"Yes, Marshal Crichton."
Simon Hunt yawns expansively and stretches his arms above his head. I pull back the curtains and light streams into the small upstairs room. Hunt scratches his moustache and glances across at me. I am already in my cowboy clothes, ready for the first performance of the morning. "What time is it?" he asks.
8:30. Did you sleep well?
"Like a baby. Did I miss anything interesting?"
"Don't you remember?"
"I remember last night." He smiles at me. "But what happened after midnight?"
I perch down on the side of the bed. "You were carried over to the back office. Some kind of auto-suggestion.
"I don't remember that."
Hardly surprising. So you don't remember me trying to shoot you?"
"No, good gracious. Why would you want to shoot me?"
"Long story." I explain about the conditioning room and Mr. Peabody laid out on the slab. Hunt sits himself up as he listens. He may have only just woken, but his hair is immaculately coiffured, even his moustache. I must get the name of his hairdresser. He yawns again and stretches out his arms.
"I confess I am starting to rather like this place, Wenchworld."
He reaches across to the bedside table to grab his sunglasses.
"I might even write a piece about it for the papers."
I meet his eye in alarm. "Simon, are you sure that's you speaking? You haven't forgotten why we're here?"
"No, of course not. The idea just popped into my head."
He frowns, catching the implication.
"You don't think—"
I do think exactly that. The conditioning is already taking hold. Next thing we know, he'll be popping down to the bank to make a donation. "Don't worry about it," I reassure him. "It should wear off in time." He rubs the corner of his moustache.
"I do hope so."
The good news is, Marshal Crichton now thinks I'm on her side. Her chief scientist installed a loyalty chip next to my core processor, but the chip is a dummy. I've been at the firing range all night. They've given me a full set of ammunition. It feels good to have my boobs back in proper working order. I would have liked to have had a go with the bows and arrows, though. The other tarts were having a great time dressing up as Indians, but no night off for me.
"Do you know what Marshal Crichton and her cronies are planning?"
Hunt asks. "I'm not sure, but they're keeping us alive so we can give the theme park a clean bill of health. They want us to inform the authorities that wife-bot in Basingstoke was a rogue, say she murdered the real woman and dumped the body off her own back. They think we'll both go along with it."
"They're obviously not as clever as they think they are."
Hunt swings his legs over the side of the bed. He rises up, takes me in his arms, and plants a heavy kiss on my lips.
"Darling, I've just had the most marvellous idea."
There isn't time, I tell him, sadly. I've got a jailbreak to arrange. His eyes are twinkling behind his sunglasses.
That wasn't what I was suggesting.
Buxom Betty is looking rather worried. We meet up at the stables with the other girls to collect our horses for the regular morning assault on the marshal's office. Betty is sitting on a stool, awkwardly trying to lace up her boots beneath the many petticoats. It is a difficult manoeuvre for someone of her stature, but that is not what is troubling her. This place gets weirder every minute, she grumbles. I tie my bonnet into place and load the blanks into my shotgun. I have a revolver at my waist as well, and it feels good to be properly armed, though I'm unlikely to need live ammunition for a routine jailbreak. We're just about to rescue a ball-bearing magnate from prison. What could be weirder than that? Have you met his wife? I shrug. I think I saw her last night in the saloon. I saw her this morning, being carried out the back of the undertakers, Betty says. They were putting her in a box and hauling her away. Was she dead? I don't think so. I did a thermal image. Her body was still warm, but they're digging out a new plot in the graveyard. That is odd, I admit. What were you doing round there at that time in the morning? Just having a quiet fag. Betty has really taken to tobacco. She is not addicted, of course. Nicotine has no effect on a fembot. It is just the routine she likes. So what are you worried about? Maybe the woman had too much to drink last night. Betty stands herself up, not without some difficulty, and shoots me a hostile glare. You think I'm stupid, don't you? Her 30 double H bust quivers with indignation. There's something funny going on here. You don't work for an international crime syndicate for months on end without knowing when something's up. It does seem a bit suspicious, I agree, cautiously, the way the marshal's running things. Buxom Betty shudders. One of the deputies saw me watching the gravediggers. That cow, Fembot Yvette. She gave me such a look. What can she do? Betty isn't sure. Who knows? I got away as quickly as I could, grabbed my costume and made my way over here. But as I was walking up the high street, I glanced across at the saloon and you'll never guess what I saw. I have a fair idea. The same woman peering out of an upstairs window. She scowls, irritated that I have guessed correctly. How did you know that? Just a stab in the dark? It was the same woman, Betty agrees. The wife of the ball-bearing man. They must have replaced her with a fembot. It's the only explanation. That must have been the woman I saw lying next to Peabody in the back office last night. Hey, look. If the marshal wants to replace the odd wife with an android replicant, it's up to her. I just don't like being kept in the dark. That girl's got a lot to answer for, I say. Don't worry, Betty. She'll get her comeuppance, and probably sooner than anyone expects. Simon Hunt has come up with a rather good plan.
Hey, are you two going to stop yakking?
Gelignite Jill calls out from one of the stalls. She has already mounted her horse.
We've got a breakout to organise.
The chalk pit, adjacent to the Wenchworld facility, is a short ride away. The place was originally intended to be used for desert scenes in the aborted movie, but now it's been converted into a children's playground. Scores of fake cactuses are dotted across the terrain. The school kids love coming out here in the afternoon to visit the Yosemite Sisters hideout,
a small cave stuffed full of contraband. You name it, we've got it. Dynamite, liquor, cigarettes. The horses have a quick feed, while Gelignite Jill grabs what she needs for the show. Then it's back to Dodgeville for the jailbreak. The opening scene is quite sedate, with the sisters trotting gently along the high street. We pull up near the marshal's office, dismount, and slip quietly into the gap between the jailhouse and the funeral parlour. A dozen guests are congregated outside the saloon to watch the action. These are the people who stayed overnight. There are no children this time. The school shows don't start until the afternoon. Gelignite Jill places a small barrel of gunpowder outside the nearest window and lights a long fuse. We move away and stick our fingers in our ears. That always gets a laugh. There is a puff of smoke and a fake bang. When the mist clears, the surrounding wall has disintegrated. "That must cost them a fortune in plaster," I hear one of the audience remark. But it wasn't a real explosion. It was all theatrics. I glance briefly across at the crowd. Simon Hunt is nowhere to be seen, but I am not concerned at his absence. He will be putting our little plan into effect. I just hope his powers of persuasion work as well on the other fembots as they do on me. Inside the marshal's office, the jailer has jumped to his feet. He is coughing and spluttering, his stock reaction to the implosion of the jailhouse wall. I move through the gap, raise my shotgun, and fill him full of lead. Buxom Betty grabs the keys from a hook, and we advance on Peabody. The man has a huge grin on his face as we unlock the cell door. His smile is soon smothered by Buxom Betty as she lifts him up and swings him over her shoulder. Together, we rush back out into the street. The guard outside the bank, on the opposite side of the road, has risen from his seat in horror. Marshal, there's a jailbreak," he declares. Gelignite Jill lets off 2 barrels and floors the fellow from 20 yards away. Another triumphant death scene. He's really got that sliding down the wall routine off to perfection. Buxom Betty throws the ball-bearing magnet onto the back of her horse, and we prepare to leave. Marshal Crichton appears at the far end of the street. She has shaving foam on her face, as if she has been interrupted during her early morning ablutions. That gets a few chuckles from the spectators. "Stop right there," she hollers, wiping her face with a towel. But she is too late. We are already mounted and heading out of town. The horses barely get 15 yards before we are cut off by the deputies. 4 heavily armed women have stepped out into the street ahead of us. One lets off a shot, and Good Time Gertie is knocked from her horse. The fall is quite spectacular. She knows how to throw herself about, does Gertie. I return fire, winging one of the deputies, but then my blood pouch explodes, and on cue, my horse rears up underneath me. This is the bit I really don't like, my own fall from grace. Before I have even let go of the reins, I see Buxom Betty take a shot to the head. Her faceplate flips off and crashes to the ground. That's not right. They shouldn't be aiming at the head. They're only meant to blow the bloody hands off. The deputies are firing live ammunition. I let out a curse as a second shot rips through Betty's left arm. I abandon the fall and give my horse a hard kick. Thunder whinnies in confusion. This isn't part of the act, but I have no choice.
I was not expecting things to escalate so quickly. Goodtime Gertie is lying on the ground, her limbs twitching. She didn't dive from her horse. She was knocked off. Two can play at that game. I circle round and pull a knife from my skirts, then hurl the blade at the second deputy. It hits her straight between the eyes. She totters for a moment and then collapses backwards onto the sand. I kick Thunder again, and he spurts forward, past the last of the deputies and out of town. Buxom Betty attempts to follow me, but another deputy is trying to grab the reins of her horse. She punches the girl in the face, and then she too is galloping away amid a hail of live bullets. The crowd are cheering and stamping their feet behind us, but Simon Hunt, whose face appears briefly at the window of the bank, has guessed that something is wrong. Marshal Crichton must have realised my reprogramming last night was a sham. She knows I will not file the report she wants, and she has decided to stage an accident instead. A rather depleted gang pulls up at the chalk pit a few minutes later. It is just me, Gelignite Jill, and Buxom Betty. The other androids have all been permanently deactivated. Half of the Yosemite sisters cut down in just a couple of minutes. Derek Peabody is still with us, however, stretched out uncomfortably on the back of Betty's horse. "What's going on?" he demands as I help him down. He is a thin, crumpled man in ill-fitting leather boots. "I thought I was meant to be recaptured by the marshal." "So did I tell him bitterly. The usual shtick is a mock hanging for the outlaw, followed by a last-minute reprieve. The punter then rushes into the arms of his wife and lives happily ever after. But this time, the woman standing outside the saloon, ready to receive him, will not be his wife. According to Betty, his real spouse is lying trapped in a wooden box, about to be buried alive. I cannot afford to worry about that just now. Buxom Betty looks in a bad way. She is laid out on top of a rock just outside the cave. Jill is tending to her. Betty's face has been blown half away, and she is missing an arm. Her other limbs are twitching erratically. I take a close look at her head. The core processor is badly damaged. "I shouldn't have gone snooping," Betty admits, her voice now little more than an electronic buzz. "But hey, that's what we're programmed for, doing the dirty on people. And now they've done the dirty on us." "At least we've got Mr. Peabody," I say. "They won't attack us while he's here." The ball-bearing magnate is far too valuable. "But we're unarmed," Betty points out, sadly. I grin and click my boobs into place. "You speak for yourself." An hour later, we spot a lone figure riding through the desert towards us. It is a human being, not an android. Professor Cordelia Lovelace, still dressed in her white lab coat. She steps down from her horse and approaches us cautiously. "They've got your friend Simon Hunt," she tells us. "They found him creeping about the liquor store. They're going to hang him unless you give yourself up and return Mr. Peabody." "That isn't going to happen," I say. "You tell the marshal I'll meet her in the high street at noon. Just her and me, alone. 1 6-shooter apiece. We'll keep Peabody here under guard until it's all over.
If she kills me, she can take him back. If I win, she releases Simon Hunt. Lovelace is dubious. I'm not sure if she'll agree to that. Make her agree. 2 shots if it's a yes, 1 if it's a no. But make it a yes. Then we can finish this once and for all. The Professor nods unhappily. The streets of Dodgeville are all but deserted. The overnight guests have been sent packing, and the afternoon crowds kept well away. This is family business. I gallop into town at the appointed hour, my thighs clamped tightly to Thunder's reassuringly warm torso. Marshal Louise Crichton stands alone in the centre of the high street. She is a peculiar figure, tall, in brown leather, her hair cropped back, and a huge broad-brimmed hat on her head, all trace of femininity hidden away. I don't think she quite gets the idea of being a fembot. Her mouth prepares a dollop of phlegm, and it skitters across the sand like a pebble skimming a lake. I pull up at the water trough and dismount, giving Thunder a quick slap on the backside. He trots obediently out of range. My eyes take in the length of the high street. 2 deputies with rifles are situated at windows on either side of the thoroughfare, one above the liquor store, one over the funeral parlour. Mrs. Peabody, the wife-bot, is peering down at us from an upstairs room in the Lost Hope saloon. The sight that really catches my eye, however, is Simon Hunt. The novelist is sitting on a horse at the far end of the street, his dark glasses glinting in the sunlight. Around his neck there is a noose, the top end of which is attached to a lamp-post. Deputy Yvette stands next to him, ready to thump the horse at a moment's notice. If the animal bolts, the rope will break his neck. Hunt flashes a smile as I make my way across to meet the marshal. Nothing ruffles Simon Hunt. That moustache is unflappable. Fembot Louise looks up at me from beneath her wide-brimmed hat. The clock tower starts to chime. Bong! The sound of the bell reverberates across the town. Well, well, well. The marshal eyes me up and down. I didn't think you'd have the guts to show your face. Bong! She pulls back her jacket to reveal her revolver, an Eastwood .45. Bong! I drop a hand to the holster wrapped around my skirts. Bong! I look up at the marshal. Her fingers are twitching. I am surprised she is playing this fair. We could both bring out the machine guns if we really wanted to. Bong! You don't think I'm going to let you walk out of here, she says, with a lopsided grin. Bong! You have no choice, Marshal. We have Mr. Peabody. You can't afford... Bong! For him to get shot. These chimes are starting to irritate me now. I want to get this over with. Bong! That's number 8. 4 more to go. You haven't asked me how I knew, the marshal says. How I knew your loyalty chip was a fake. Bong! She smiles maliciously. My deputies ain't the only ones who've been fitted with them. Bong! She nods past me. Another horse is galloping into town. One of your little sisters betrayed you. I don't need to look back. I already know who it is. Bong! Number 11. Jellic-Knight Jill pulls up alongside me, her shotgun aimed at my head. Derek Peabody is slung over the back of her horse. Jill reaches down into her knapsack
and pulls a decapitated head out of the bag. It is buxom Betty, what is left of her. She drops the head casually to the ground. Bong! High noon. That's it. I swing around and let Gelignite Jill have it at close range, straight in the face. It's what she deserves, the dirty little traitor. Her horse rears up, throwing her and Peabody at the same moment. Her shotgun goes off in a reflex action, but the bullet careers several inches wide of my head. Marshal Crichton opens fire a fraction of a second later, but her first shot smacks into Gelignite Jill as she falls from her horse. Peabody thuds to the ground between us. I duck down as a second shot whistles past my ear. Then I grab hold of the ball-bearing executive and, with bullets buzzing around us, I drag him across to the water trough. We will be safe there for a moment. The Marshal turns her attention back to Simon Hunt. He is sitting patiently in the saddle, his neck straining at the noose. She raises her hand, and Fembot Yvette lets out a cry of pleasure as she slaps the horse hard on the backside. The animal leaps forward, but I have already taken careful aim with my revolver. I let off a shot and sever the rope just above Hunt's head. The horse canters forward, but the novelist manages to keep his balance as well as his neck. The deputies at the windows start firing at him. A couple more rush out of the undertakers to intercept the horse, but they are too slow. Hunt almost manages to run down the Marshal, but she steps aside and he hurtles past her instead, pulling up at the water trough and throwing himself from the horse. I stand up briefly to give him covering fire. My boobs have clicked into position and my gun tubes spit lead across the high street as Hunt rolls sideways and joins me behind the metal trough. I duck back down before the deputies are able to return fire. I am sure I winged at least one of them. Peabody has seen his wife at the saloon window. "Daphne!" he exclaims, rising to his feet. The idiot! He'll get himself killed. The Marshal has abandoned her six-shooter and followed my lead, activating the gun barrels in her chest. "Get down!" Hunt cries out, pulling Peabody out of the line of fire. The novelist is looking rather the worse for wear. I have already untied him. I toss him my revolver and he lets off a couple of shots. The forces of law and order are moving slowly down the street towards us. Hunt drops one of the deputies with a final shot, but that is the last of the ammunition. My boobs have a few rounds left, but if I stand up now, I'll probably get my head blown off. I glance across at Hunt. "Please tell me you managed to organise something." He smiles calmly and glances at his watch. "Any second now." An arrow thuds through the air and smacks into the head of Deputy Yvette. She stands stock still for a moment, astonishment registering in her electronic eyes. Her arms jerk for a second or two, and then she collapses forward into the sand. Nice to see her being shot for a change. I resist the urge to shout, "Yee-haw!" The arrow came from a window above the liquor store, but there is a sudden loud whoop in the distance and the rumble of horses' hooves from the far end of the street. Peabody glances over the lip of the horse trough. "Indians!" he exclaims, scarcely believing the evidence of his own eyes. Half a dozen Red Indian braves in full battle regalia gallop into town. They pull back their bows and launch a volley of arrows at the dumbfounded deputies. All that practice on Wednesday nights is clearly paying off. I recognise most of the fembots from the saloon yesterday evening, even underneath all that war paint. "You have been busy," I breathe. I gave Hunt a list of every unconverted fembot and got him to pass the word around this morning. They have all been itching to take down Marshal Crichton, and this is their chance. There is nothing a fembot likes more than stabbing another fembot in the back. Apart from mindless violence, of course, and that they are getting in spades. Marshal Crichton takes only a second to recover her senses. She swivels around to face the Indians, and her chest opens fire. The first of the attackers is cut down. Another sends an arrow through Crichton's shoulder, but the Marshal barely flinches. Dozens of fembots are now running about, shooting and dismembering each other. Even Mrs. Peabody has come downstairs to help out. Mr. Peabody rises up again and rushes across to her before I can stop him. "Darling, get under cover!" he cries. "I think they're firing real A glancing shot to his head proves him correct, and he slithers to the ground amid a cloud of dust. The wife-bot doesn't spare him a second glance. "I think this might be a good time to leave," Hunt suggests casually. The firefight is getting out of control. It looks like every fembot in town has joined the melee. I whistle for my horse, and Thunder trots obediently over. I rise up to grab his reins, letting off a final round of bullets from my chest cavity, while Hunt pulls himself up onto the saddle behind me. Then the two of us gallop the hell out of Dodgeville. After 200 yards, we pull up on a small hill and look back down at the town. There are dozens of bodies strewn across the high street, cowboys and Indians, some of them still twitching, others inanimate. The gunfire is beginning to die away. Only one android is left standing, the Marshal. Her faceplate has been knocked away and her left shoulder has been dislocated, but otherwise she appears to be in good working order. "Just our luck," Hunt comments sourly from the back of the horse. Fembot Louise picks up her shotgun and looks straight at us. Slowly, she begins to make her way towards the hill. Hunt adjusts his sunglasses irritably. Some people never give up. We find Buxom Betty lying in pieces outside the cave. Gelignite Jill must have waited for us to leave and then hacked her head off. The girl was too badly damaged to defend herself. "It's my fault," I say. I knew full well that Jill was the traitor. I'd seen her name on the list Professor Lovelace showed me last night. I knew she would overhear my conversation with Betty and report it to the Marshal, and I knew the Marshal would take action against us, although I hadn't expected it to happen quite so quickly. We both agreed, Hunt reminds me, calmly. We couldn't just leave this place and report back to London. Wenchworld had to be shut down today, before anyone else got replaced. The Marshal won't let us leave now. She'll track us down wherever we go. Hunt smiles grimly. Then I suppose we'd better let her catch us. The interior of the cave is as black as the night sky, though there is still enough residual light for a fembot's eyeballs to register movement, even without the use of infrared. A couple of flaming torches give further assistance, casting dull shadows against the wooden boxes stockpiled around the edge of the hideout. The cave is full of booty. Some of it is even real. Marshal Crichton appears in silhouette at the mouth of the cave. I have my gun barrels extended, but they are just for show. My ammunition cartridge is already fully expended. The Marshal hesitates before stepping into the cave. She wants to know where we are before she enters the dragon's lair.
"I'm over here,"
Hunt calls out helpfully. He waves a torch above his head from behind a large rock. Her infrared will be able to detect the body heat from his arm as well as the torch. She moves forward. I have ducked down behind several crates of cigarettes on the other side of the cave. My internal heating has been switched off, so she cannot see me. A crude tripwire has been laid out across the centre of the cave. Marshal Crichton looks down at it with scorn. "It's over, Fembot Louise," I call out. "Even if you kill us, your plans are in tatters."
"I don't think so," she replies. "I have my scientists. I can start over again."
She has dropped her accent at long last. She is probably getting just as tired of all this faux Americana as we are. "You're too badly damaged," I say. "You're not functioning properly.
Stand up where I can see you."
"Not bloody likely." The Marshal skips over the tripwire and opens fire randomly. Bullets ricochet across the interior of the cave. One thuds into my backside, shredding a perfectly decent pair of M&S knickers. Another comes within a whisker of Hunt's finely trimmed moustache. He is unperturbed.
"Can I pour you a drink, Marshal?" he inquires, uncorking a bottle of whiskey.
Fembot Louise gathers a mouthful of phlegm and tosses it at the cave wall before moving towards the voice. I hurl my own bottle of hooch at the android. It smashes uselessly against her undamaged shoulder. Hunt has taken a large gulp of whiskey. He stands up abruptly, holds the torch in front of his mouth, and exhales. Marshal Crichton is engulfed in flames. I grab another bottle of spirits and lob it at her. With her faceplate open, the flames have direct access to her circuit boards. She flails around angrily, her boobs spitting bullets at us. I lose a hand, and Hunt lets out a yelp as a bit of shrapnel hits him square in the backside. I'm glad I'm not the only one getting shot in the arse. Crichton is thrashing about, but at last her gun cartridge is exhausted. I step forward and smack her in the face. Hunt grabs another bottle and smashes it across her head.
"Damn, sugar glass."
Her arm thumps him in the stomach for his trouble, but it is a glancing blow. The Marshal staggers blindly forward towards the crates of whiskey. Beyond that is an even larger box of dynamite. Hunt and I exchange worried glances. We pelt headlong for the mouth of the cave as a ball of flame erupts behind us. The explosion sends us both flying through the air. Hunt lands on his back in front of me, and I collapse on top of him. There is a loud metallic roar from Marshal Crichton, a death rattle, and all is silent in the cave. Hunt looks up at me, his sunglasses askew, but his moustache spotless. There is a warm smile on his face. Something hard is pressing against my hip. He digs a hand into his pocket and brings out his pipe. Mission accomplished, I say. The writer looks a little less dashing with his trousers around his ankles. He is leaning forward against the bar of the saloon. A man with a pair of tweezers is removing the shrapnel from his backside. Another technician is replacing my left hand. There is no sign of Professor Lovelace. She must have run away at the first sound of gunfire. I can't blame her for that. She was lucky not to have been punished, though, for fitting me with that fake loyalty chip. I suppose there wasn't time. In any case, the woman was far too useful to be killed. Limbs and faceplates are strewn across the town. Robotic corpses are lying everywhere. It might be possible to stitch a couple of them back together, but most of the fembots are beyond repair. The technicians have provided us with a list of replicants that have been sent out into the larger world. As luck would have it, there were only 4 of them. The wives and secretaries they replaced have been traced to the Wenchworld cemetery. The police will have to dig up the bodies, as the poor lambs were buried alive. We did at least get to Mrs. Peabody in time. She has been reunited with her husband. He has been rushed off to hospital with a bloody head, gibbering all the while about wanting to make a donation. The technician has finished his work on Hunt's rather hairy backside. The ageing Lothario lifts his trousers stiffly and rebuttons them. Not the most dignified of endings, he admits, shooting me a grin. You need plenty of bed rest, the technician tells him. Hunt's eyes light up and he turns to me. I still have the key to number 4. The second technician has finished work on my hand. I suppose I could do with a bit of a lie down as well, I say. Hunt rubs his moustache, which, unlike his backside, is still immaculately coiffured. May I be permitted to escort you? I smile back. Sweetheart, you surely may. He leans forward, a little awkwardly, and swings my legs up into his arms. Then he carries me, step by step, up the wooden staircase to the guest suite. The floorboards creak reassuringly beneath his feet. As we move up together, he kisses me carelessly on the lips. I love the feel of his moustache. It is warm and reassuring. Fembots are not just designed for mindless violence. We have other talents too. Hunt pulls me close, and I let out a gasp of pleasure. Oh, Simon! This has been Wenchworld, written by Samantha Faulkner, narrated by Alison Campbell. Copyright 2017 by Samantha Faulkner. For news of other titles in this series, visit the website fembotsally.com.